Okay, welcome. This is the Finance Committee meeting. Today is Monday, March 8th, 2021. It's 7 o'clock. We're broadcasting on the virtual Zoom platform with Whitman Hanson Cable Access. Thank you very much. We will take a quick review of the agenda that was emailed in advance. John Noon, welcome.
Hello.
So we have meeting minutes that from the March 1st meeting that we don't have yet, that are in process. So we'll hold off on reviewing and voting those meeting minutes. The reserve fund stands at $37,321.20. Public forum is suspended due to the restrictions associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. If anyone from the public wishes to get a hold of the Finance Committee for any reason, please send an email to randerson@whitman/ma.gov. So gender is our regular business here. We'll talk about the budget. Under old business, we do have our subcommittee reports, our standing agenda items, Whitman Hanson Regional School District Assessment, non-mandated busing, the audit, the annual town meeting and special town meeting warrants, and the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. So other business, we have the town administrator here, accountant. I did not hear from Ken. I am surprised that he isn't on to get an update from him as well. Ralph, welcome to the meeting.
Ralph.
Okay, so upcoming meetings, we have, I'll be posting tomorrow morning for next Monday, which will be March 15th. Then we have 3 more meetings, the 22nd, 29th, and April 5th, prior to the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on April 13th. And then the special town meeting and the annual town meeting dates are to be determined. So that's it for an agenda review. So we are not going to work on any meeting minutes, so we will move right into the discussion on the budget. So I'm going to put it to the board to see how the board and Lincoln would like to proceed with a review of Article 2. So with 4 meetings prior to the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, and at which time we are supposed to be delivering a balanced budget, we kind of need to make some kind of an outline of how we're going to get there. So I would say that one of the things that we still have yet to do is to hear from the only budget manager that we haven't heard from is the Board of Selectmen town administrator lines. Lincoln, would you be prepared to go through those with the committee tonight?
I'd like to schedule for next week if that's okay.
Okay.
I'd certainly want Ken to help with that since he was originally putting that together.
Sure. Yeah.
He had a lot of say on that. I'm hope Ken's okay. I'm surprised he's not here either. He said, I spoke with him today and he said he'd be here. So hope all is okay with him, but I'd suggest that that'd be a great thing to do next week.
Okay. So the other pieces of the outline, I suppose, are to then do a general review of each department by total on this Article 2 draft that we have before us. Everybody has the same one. There are some numbers that maybe we can get Ken to give us an updated copy for our next meeting as well. For instance, we did hear from the Plymouth County retirement. I guess we have a solid number with that now. Is that correct, Lincoln? We did.
That is correct, yes.
Mary Beth saying that the Plymouth County retirement number was finalized. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we could get numbers like that updated, anything else, that the board would suggest that we get updated for our Article 2 before we delve into a department by department review. I think for the benefit of Lincoln, we could use, as we discussed last week, the meetings that we had with each department when they submitted their budgets and we talked about them in detail. The thoughts of the board could be reflected to Lincoln, who would then is going to, I guess, work with the Board of Selectmen to, move towards balancing this budget. Would you say that was correct, Lincoln?
I would, yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
So
Yeah,
any-
and if I could briefly, I
Mhm.
think it would be great just to, I know we talked last week about how it would be very helpful to have some input, from the board members by a week from tonight, by that meeting, for input on, obviously you folks met with each department head budget wise. It may be obvious, but I've been having regular meetings with the department heads, not specific to budget, but in general. So certainly, your folks' input would be very helpful by a week from tonight.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or suggestions to supplement that plan? John Galvin?
Yeah, I still think we're a little premature in going in until we have a final vote of the school committee to, tell us exactly what their plans are. And, until then, we really can't, aside from commenting, I don't see how we can make any financial recommendations until we know exactly what the school committee has voted on. We have this, large number in front of us right now, and if that's what they're going to vote on, then let them go at it. But, they meet on Wednesday again and supposedly going through it line by line. Technically they have to approve it by March 17th. They have to vote because that's 45 days prior to our town meeting. So they have until March 17th to vote. Now, we all know last year that they blew right past that deadline. Hopefully this year they don't, but
Well, here's another consideration too. During the school committee meeting, I did hear the dates thrown around for June to coincide with graduation to utilize the field and the setup for the district. So again, if we wait too long, they're just gonna, as you said, they did last year, extended the deadline. And then we find ourselves scrambling at the last minute. So I think the discussions that we're speaking about starting next week are kind of general nature, talking about percentages of an increase from last year's budgets that were submitted. For Lincoln to get some idea of, maybe why the department felt the need for this increase as opposed to, the increase that they got last year type of discussion. So yeah, I totally agree with you, John. I would say in a perfect world, to have an assessment number plugged into this Article 2 would be the ideal way to run through. But I think what we're going to have to do, as we have in the past, is do a number of passes through here once we get all the final numbers. So Kathleen, do you get any, as the liaison to the regional school district, any communications about dates specific to an assessment number that could be finalized for us to consider?
No, it's my understanding that the school committee hadn't, as of yesterday, hadn't received their packet for this Wednesday's meeting. And then I haven't had any communication since then. I believe the superintendent is going to go through the line by line presentation as he did a year ago. And then not this Wednesday, but at a subsequent meeting, they'll vote the budget, but that's just my understanding. I also know, and Lincoln, you may know more about this than I do, there are some ESSER 2 funds that are available for the school to reduce the impact of the increase in the minimum local contributions, because both towns experienced a significant increase. And that's part of the calculation that's used to do the assessment under the statutory method, that I think Whitman's assessment went up by $474,000. So that's one of the reasons that we're looking at this whopping increase to our assessment, is that our minimum local contribution went up by almost $500,000. And Hanson's, I think, went up by about 350,000. So their final numbers, it's such a huge budget with so many moving parts that it's premature to start even guessing what the final assessment to Whitman will be once they go through the budget, question the superintendent on his requests, and then vote and have John Tuffy pull together the impact of these funds that have been suggested but need to be appropriated. And we all know what that phrase "needs to be appropriated" implies, that maybe it's not. So it's such a big budget, and there's no decision coming from the schools for at least another week.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. So I think, just for our outline, I guess, then back to Lincoln's request, maybe for next week to review the budget lines within Article 2 that are under the jurisdiction, if you will, of the Board of Selectmen and the Town Administrator. And then perhaps the following week, then to do since we have more time, to do the budget review from the meetings that we had with each budget manager the week of the 22nd. Does anybody? Yes, go ahead, Lincoln.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. So my intention, when we were talking about those 2 weeks, I just wanted to make sure that Ken and I had sufficient time to, be having the internal conversations that we needed before the April 13th meeting that was, that the selectmen agreed to. So but to be clear, I recognize what I'm asking specifically from this committee would be great to have folks input on the budget items that aren't school, because I recognize that prior to a final number from the school committee, that's difficult. So just to be clear, I'm hoping for non-school input.
Sure, yeah. Okay, anybody else? Anything to John New?
I've actually lined out what I have questions about in the overall article. And it's not necessarily a case of feeling that it either needs to be a cut made, but just an explanation made as to either how that line item was arrived at or is it something the committee feels we need to question, which I guess would get us to a certain degree in a position to discuss with Lincoln what our feeling is about certain budget line items. The other question I guess I have is, I read in one newspaper, I'm not obviously feeling necessarily that this was the gospel, but that the town meeting was still on for May, the first week in May. And another newspaper basically outlines what seemed to be coming from the school superintendent prior, obviously, to the committee vote, with very specific amounts of money covering the busing, the non-mandated busing, the budget overall. And the talk was in this particular article that Wednesday would be the line by line discussion at the region. And then the 17th would actually be the vote on the budget. Now, again, I don't know necessarily where this is all coming from, but I guess it's concerning to me that we're on the one hand not sure exactly what's going to happen with town meeting, but somebody, I guess, reported to the paper that there's going to be a May town meeting, and the budget numbers, I don't know how much the school committee gets involved in changing those, but it looks like we could have a budget by the 17th of March. But the bottom line is, if we continue to wait, I'm still going to have my line item questions. And I don't know if it would be helpful to take that on And it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to reschedule a department head. It could very well be that this knowledgeable group could help this rookie, myself, understand where we're at.
Okay, good points, John. Yeah, very well taken. So, we have a lot of, different moving parts this budget season than in past. We have, a new town administrator, just getting his feet under. We have Ken that's taken a very active role with the budget this year, and it's been very helpful. We hope that continues. So I think with all of these parts, we have to somehow get this Article 2 into somewhat of a preliminary outline. So I suggest that we continue with the work that we're doing. And John Galvin makes a good point. I mean, until we have the final numbers from the district and the school committee votes the assessment, we don't have a number for that line item within Article 2. So, but the discussions can continue. We can talk about the percentage increase that like I used last week, the police department provided a number and the backup for his request. But the discussion is part that the Lincoln wasn't here for. So I think then hearing from the 9 members of the finance committee on exactly how that was presented and how the finance committee feels about moving forward with a different percentage or recommending concurring with the budget manager's percentage. So I think those conversations are going to take some time, and time is what we have, I guess. Al, you got
Now it's the time we have, Rick. I don't think we have the time. The school committee, they're not letting, they want to let us know what the budget is. They're not letting us know. Have you asked them about that?
Well, go ahead, Lincoln.
So I just want to clarify a few things. Number one, so I know there's been discussion about when town meeting will be, but I want to be clear on this. So as I'm sure the members of this committee know, our bylaws lay out that town meeting will be May 3rd. And so I'm operating under that assumption that it will be. I have within the last week spoken informally to a few members of the Board of Selectmen, and they concur that they want to see it go forward on May 3rd. And I'm intending to have a brief discussion tomorrow night with the Board of Selectmen to make sure that the consensus of the board is to stick with May 3rd. But that's what I'm operating under. As far as I know, I expect it to be May 3rd per our bylaws. So I just want to be clear on that. I'm not sure which newspaper reported that it might not be May 3rd. I didn't see that, but I just want to try and clear that up. So
now we have a deadline, Lincoln, right?
well, effectively, yes. And that's really why, not to put you folks under the gun, but that's really why, I was looking for those, for that feedback, that non-school feedback by a week from tonight,
Right.
to make sure that I know, I can't, that I know, where this committee is budget-wise, specifically with expenditures. I can't guarantee that what I'm going to be showing, what Ken and I are going to be showing to the Board of Selectmen and you folks on April 13th is going to reflect that. But I definitely want to know, and I definitely want to incorporate it if I, agree. And I'm sure in many cases I probably will agree with your folks' feeling on items. So that's why I'm asking for that, because I expect, as far as I fully expect town meeting to occur May 3rd, unless I get some different guidance from the board tomorrow night.
John Galvin.
Yeah, just so to answer Al, so the school committee is required by law to vote a budget 45 days prior to our town meeting. So that's what sets the March 17th deadline on there. So had we agreed to move the town meeting like we did last year, then that 45-day slide goes as well. But they voted last year, they didn't adhere to that 45-day requirement. And Lincoln, I don't know if you can answer this question, but who slaps them on the wrist if they don't? You know, I mean, I don't know what trouble they get into. Obviously, nobody's going to punish them if they don't, but certainly I would hope that they would adhere to that this year, because they did not last year.
Agreed, John. Good point.
Okay, yep, it's a good point, John. Thank you. I mean, I don't think anybody on this committee would like to see town meeting delayed at all either, Lincoln, just so you have a sense from the board. Is there anybody on the board that would recommend that the town meeting be delayed? I think,
No,
especially from the perspective of the special town meeting, where we have a ticking time bomb laying under the streets until we get that forced main project moving forward. Go ahead, Lincoln.
And I just want to be clear. I mean, the only reason from my perspective that, you know, I believe that all the members of the Board of Selectmen would agree with me on this, which is the consideration about whether or not town meeting is delayed from May 3rd is a public health consideration and nothing else, right? So, you know, we don't know where we're going to be from a public health perspective with the pandemic on May 3rd, but setting that aside, I don't think there's any doubt that town meeting will be May 3rd, with that caveat that none of us know, right? So I just want to be clear on that.
That is the reason why town meeting was delayed. It was definitely a public health issue that delayed it. But, you know, using that as an example, I guess logistically, the date to extend into June, I believe, were from the superintendent, who talked about setup for the graduation and how it would be, you know, logistically simplified if town meeting were to, you know, occur concurrent with that whole scenario. So that's the only reason why I say that there were other dates that were floated around. But I would certainly say, for the perspective of the town of Whitman, to have it in May is definitely beneficial to the town.
Rick, didn't we downsize the requirements for the town to have majority or the amount of people that have to be at town meeting?
That was only the special town meeting that we were going to have.
Okay,
That and at this point right now, I don't know if that is still a guideline or not, if that still stands, since we never had the meeting.
right,
You know, but I would think we would have to vote that again. And if we're going to be outside, which we're going to be more than likely, I don't
Right.
know that we'd have maybe, you know, the necessary to lower the quorum requirement.
right. The thought.
Okay, yep, okay, Al, thank you. John, Kathleen?
I just have a quick question, Lincoln, and that has to do with the rumors that are circulating about interest in extending the compromise, which I'm sure you are familiar with. And people are quoting other people. So is there any interest at being expressed by the Board of Selectmen to engage in one more year of compromise, or are we committed to the full statutory implementation of the budget assessment?
I would say that the pretty strong consensus at this time from the Board of Selectmen at their most recent meeting was no, that to not consider that at this time
Okay, thank you.
with the information available.
Okay, thank you very much. Ken, just to back up just a bit, Lincoln was having a discussion earlier about getting with you to talk a little bit about the budgets that were submitted prior to his arrival in Whitman. And so that maybe by next week, it would be with you and him to present the budgets that come through under the Board of Selectmen, town
Yep.
administrator heading. So are you think you're gonna have that conversations that would need to take place before the presentation to the finance committee by next week
With Lincoln or with the department heads?
with Lincoln?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll Ken and I will be ready next week. Yes.
Okay. All right, great. Because again, we're just looking for just a little bit of an outline to talk about generally the bottom line for each budget, department budget. As we look to balance this budget we're going to not do a line by line, but we're going to do a department by department comparison, percentage wise, to get the recommendation of the full committee to Lincoln
Okay,
in the next 2 weeks.
okay.
I just wanted to catch you up on that conversation that happened right before you came in.
Yep.
Thanks, Ken. All right, anybody else, anything on the budget? Okay, so moving on into old business, subcommittee reports, Building Facility Capital Expenditure Committee. Dave, anything to report out of committee?
Yes, we discussed, the town warrant was still open. However, at the time, we did have capital article requests from the school district. And I, during our meeting, I missed technology, fire, police, DPW, and water and sewer. Of those article requests, let's see, if you were to put them into categories, free cash, category would be about $509,000. Free cash and water and retained earnings would be about $886,000. We discussed the forced sewer line, which I didn't include in those numbers. That number is going to be, obviously not funded by free cash or water and sewer retained. Water and sewer retained earnings. It's going to be funded by, if approved, be funded through increases of the sewer rate. The building inspector indicated that he was not in favor of their what they call in the bid alt add-ons, which is anything that goes, well, not anything, but creating a redundant line, using the old line as a redundant line once the new one is installed. A significant part of the committee had similar opinions on that. The water and sewer commissioners are meeting this week to discuss what alt add-ons they're going to recommend as part of that bid, that request. Right now, the base is about 8 million. They want to do a water line, which adds onto that, but then a water line that's going to be in the area. And they figure they might as well do that at the same time. And then again, this alternate line on there. They're going to decide on that this week, hopefully. I anticipate probably watching that meeting once it's available. We discussed the DPW building, which came in as a request. Obviously that would not be through free cash. That would be through a borrowing and require some kind of debt exclusion. It was a unanimous opinion of our committee that without a feasibility study being complete, that project being on the town warrant this year may be premature. The building inspector indicated that it was the DPW commissioner's intent to have it on for this year's warrant. However, I haven't seen the full warrant request submitted to the town administrator just yet, so I'm not sure if they've included that as well. And that's about it. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave about the report from the capital committee? Okay, so Lincoln, correct me if I'm wrong, the Board of Selectmen will be meeting with the water commissioners this week to talk about the recommendations for what's going to be on the warrant. Is that correct?
No, actually, it looks as though that will be March 23rd, that meeting.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Dave? Kathleen?
Just a quick one, Dave. It has to do with the capital improvements that the town of Hanson have already approved that mesh with Whitman's, and that would be specifically the improvements to the telephone system. They've already funded their share of the improvements. And that takes care of their buildings and they're part of the high school. Have the warrants been submitted for Whitman's share of the telephone, improving the telephones in the school?
Yeah, the school committee had met on that last week and finalized their warrant requests. I think that was last Wednesday. And so, yeah, so they said they were submitting those same requests to the Board of Selectmen. So short answer is yes.
So it didn't go through you, it went right to the Board of Selectmen?
No.
Okay.
The Whitman Hanson Regional School District Subcommittee met last Wednesday. They forwarded them to us after that meeting, once they were finalized. We got them on Thursday. We discussed them briefly. And with the warrant still being open, they were forwarding them along to the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Dave, for the answer. Any other questions? Okay, so on the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, no meeting dates have been established to reconvene that committee. Middle School Building Committee, John Galvin.
Yeah. So we have not met, but we did receive an email on Friday at 5 p.m. that I would like to read to the committee, if that's okay with you, Rick.
Yes, absolutely.
So the email came in, MSBA Whitman Middle School eligibility period status update was the description on the email. Good afternoon. We are reaching out today to provide the current status of the Massachusetts School Building Authority invitation into the eligibility period for the Whitman Middle School. Comment, all components of Module 1, which is called the eligibility period schedule of deliverables, have been submitted to MSBA on time and within the 270-day window. The documentation provided to MSBA is currently in the review stage at MSBA. The next anticipated communication with MSBA is April 14th, 2021, regarding the next steps and moving to Module 2, pending the full approval of the prerequisites of the MSBA. And then the email goes on and talks about Module 2 and what that entails. So apparently, we are on schedule and on time with the MSBA. I will give my editorial in that our committee really had no input in any of that. So again, I want to show my displeasure to our committee that the district's doing this pretty much on their own. And until, we get some discussion in here, apparently the MSBA is happy and that's good. Well, they're kind of key in all this, but, our committee really, we've met one time to introduce ourselves and then another meeting for maybe 20 minutes. And that's all. So I don't know. Rant over, I guess.
Okay. Well, we appreciate the feedback, positive or negative. I think it's good to keep the committee aware of what the progress is. Lincoln, anything you want to add to the discussion about the Whitman Middle School project?
No, except that I completely agree with John. Clearly that committee needs to meet, and I'm looking forward to communicating that to the school district.
Thank you very much. All right. Any more questions for John regarding that? Thank you, John. Thank you, Lincoln. Women Hanson Assessment, Kathleen, as the liaison to the district, would you like to talk a little bit about anything to do with the district communication?
The communication is sparse. I get what is publicly available at meetings, no more, no less, and nor do the school committee members for that matter, at least those who are looking for additional information in a timely fashion. So I have the booklet that was handed out, that was available online, that gives us this whopping increase that we hadn't anticipated. It does not go into the detail of how the assessment has been calculated, although I do believe John Tuffy will calculate it based on the statutory method. But it defies logic that our increase is significantly higher than what we anticipated. So there's lots of moving parts in the school budget and none of them have been identified. This is just a generic overview. And the line by line information as of this afternoon was still not available to me. So I don't know what the superintendent will be presenting Wednesday night, but I will sit in on that meeting remotely. I won't be attending it in the building.
Okay. And earlier today, you forwarded some information for the committee's review regarding the assessment in reference to last year. The hybrid method, I believe you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
I want to talk briefly, although I'm convinced that our committee is not going to entertain prolonging the compromise discussion. But it defies logic that there are people in Whitman who feel that we somehow owe Hanson another handout. After saying they couldn't afford their fair share of the assessment and after we giving the town $570,000 to meet in the compromise, granted it was July 27th, we didn't have much time to come up with a different solution. Hanson went on to have an October 3rd special town meeting, and I did share this with the committee, so I'm not going to read line by line what they spent, but they spent over $1 million, including $750,000 from free cash. And they spent it on items that people in Whitman might have liked, like a new car for the fire department and a new cruiser for the police department. They have replaced windows. The list is explicit. Their article, their special town meeting article warrant is available. The only thing they didn't fund was line 6. So you can get the gist of what they did. They did a lot of good for the town of Hanson, spending over $1 million. And it just defies logic that there are people in Whitman who want us, Whitman taxpayers, to continue to subsidize Hanson's share of the school. So I need this discussion to stop. I, as a taxpayer and as a citizen of the town, we did compromise last year. It defies all possible logic to think we should do it again when they had the money to pay the bill. They just didn't have their books open to us.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you for forwarding the information. Does anybody have any questions regarding the information that was sent out earlier by email?
No, Kathleen, I just want to say you're spot on, Kathleen. You know, if the the Whitman residents, they should move to Hanson if they feel that way, or pay additional taxes to support them.
Okay, thank you, Al. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. Non-mandated busing, we had some information. Last week, we talked a little bit about, there's still, some information. Everybody doesn't have a clear understanding. So is there anybody on the committee who wishes me to remove this item from our old business on the agenda? John Galvin.
I don't wish you to remove it, but I just want to comment. Several of us were at that meeting that they had, and to me, it defies logic that we received an increase of over $20,000 in that line in this budget. Now, I'm hoping to see on Wednesday that they make an adjustment to that. But honestly, I see it as that's something that we really want to consider looking at, and maybe consider level servicing that or level funding that this year. Again, I'd like to see what they come up with on Wednesday in that line to see if they make a change to it. But basically, by what we were told in that meeting was that a tier is about $5,000. So theoretically, by increasing our budget by $20,000, they just added 4 bus runs, which we know they didn't do. So I think we need to keep it on the agenda so that we can discuss it after Wednesday and see if they make any adjustments to that in their line by line.
Okay, thank you, John. Good point. Anybody else?
No, great point, John.
Oh, John New.
I would leave it on only because I think we should discuss this with the Board of Selectmen. Obviously, we're not going to make the policy. And it seems clear from what I'm hearing, the Whitman Hanson Regional District has no intention of managing the bus routes. So particularly when it comes to the non-mandated busing. So I don't think we're going to get anywhere as a committee, bringing it up meeting after meeting. I think we do need to bring it up with the Board of Selectmen. We don't, obviously, we're not going to manage it. There's nobody in the town of Whitman who's going to have the knowledge to manage it. And it sounds like the district is refusing to manage it.
Yeah, so.
I think
so
you mean to manage a pay per ride program.
Yeah, I think that's what you're referring to, John.
That's
right?
what you're referring to, right, John? They're not going to manage a pay per ride program?
Well, they're not managing what they have now,
Well,
realistically.
right, and I think that was evident in the meeting that we had. Dave was there too. He's raising his hand. Go ahead, Dave. I'll defer to you.
Go ahead, Dave.
I mean, the whole question is, well, the whole meeting identified, a meeting identified that the school provides a seat for every pupil. They asked the question whether or not a pupil wants to ride or not, but it seems that number, that the responses they get back are negligible, so they're not able to. They'll just take it off a list, but doesn't really mean anything. What could be, what the school committee has said is that if we were to manage this better, and have all the seats for mandated busing, and a certain percentage, less than 100, for non-mandated busing, because we know that 100% of the non-mandated bussers are not taking the bus, will result in a cost savings, meaning that they'll be able to remove a bus tier here and there. So the question is, and I think John was alluding to it too with his recommendation for, and if you're not, tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, John, but if the question is, we just should go back to the school committee is saying, have you reevaluated the management of this of the busing situation in order to reduce buses? If the question is no, then that should result in further questions from this committee. But if the answer is yes, then the question is, okay, how much of a cost savings did that result in? So,
Yep.
and I agree with John. I think you're right, John. $20,000. If nothing changes, they would just keep the same bus routes from last year, and so that $20,000 would just represent an increase in fees. And that's a $20,000 increase in fees from last year seems pretty high. I'm not in the busing world, but I mean that's the way I see that.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Lincoln, then Chuck.
If I could, I just want I think everyone on the committee knows this, but I just want to make sure that folks knew this, that the Board of Selectmen did make it clear that they were in support of this line item. I know that doesn't control what you folks recommended at town meeting, but I just wanted folks to know that in case they didn't. That being said, the superintendent, Simonak, after that meeting volunteered to me without me approaching the subject, although we'd had a quick conversation about it before, volunteered to me that he was committed to working to manage this budget line item and find efficiencies. So I just wanted this committee to know that, it's just FYI.
Right. Okay, thank you, Lincoln. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. If they have identified these deficiencies, then there's no reason why they shouldn't tighten things up and manage it more efficient and actually lower that number. Let's get on it, lower that number. It's probably money that we've been writing this check for years and years, and it probably hasn't been utilized very well. So this is for the district, manage it efficiently, and let's knock that number down. I know public safety, the school safety is important to the selectmen, for the kids, but let's manage it efficiently. We don't have much money to waste. Thank you.
Good point, Chuck. So Ken, has any money ever come back to the town or not been spent from this line, non-mandated busing line? Has there ever been a transfer from the non-mandated busing to the school district budget line? Or, I mean, this budget number, has it ever been surplus?
I don't know about prior years offhand. I do know that this year, there will be a significant amount that will be coming back to us unless we need to do a line item transfer in June. We got a bulk credit because of last year, when the buses weren't running, for at least the last 3 or 4 months. So that was a credit we saw this year, and we will be seeing this year. It's fairly substantial. I have to go back and check prior years to see if we did get anything that was turned back. I can look that up for tomorrow if you need me to.
Okay, thanks. So, yeah, the only reason why we got a credit 2020 was because the district renegotiated the contract with the carrier because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then the percentage of the total reimbursement to the district came back, the non-mandated portion for the town. So we did get that information when we met with the school committee, that number. So, yeah, we're certainly, but prior years, it would be interesting to find out if there has ever been a surplus in this line.
If I could, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Lincoln.
the work that Superintendent Simonak volunteered that they were going to be working on, which is finding efficiencies. This is, as this committee knows from seeing the existing school busing contract, it's up on June 30th, 2021. And I know, my understanding is that negotiations are occurring now between the school district and the busing company, and looking at looking at what that contract looks like going forward. So I take Superintendent Simonak at his word that they're looking at efficiencies, and this is certainly the time to look for those efficiencies as the contract is coming to its conclusion now and being either renegotiated or put out to bid again. So that's all. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen.
I just briefly want to say that this administration at the school department inherited a number of financial systems that they perpetuated because they were told this is the way things were done. Statutory method being one of them, which has cost Whitman over $4 million, close to $5 million over the last 6 years. And I think the same thing is true with the school buses in a slightly different way, in that there's no financial incentive for them to be cost effective. If they know they're going to get the line item funded, then there's no financial downside to them. They have no incentive. And I do trust that Jeff Simonek will work very hard, knowing every penny we spend on non-mandated busing is a penny we can't spend on the operating assessment. And what goes on once the kids arrive at the school is far more important than getting them in a bus. So I look forward, Lincoln, to you working with Jeff to make sure that the economies are squeezed out of that contract and that they look at new bus routes. They're just doing the same old thing they've been doing for years. And I believe that it's a part of, as John Galvin explained it to me, because I was late for that meeting and missed the first 10 minutes. And I appreciate the explanation that John gave me, that they've been doing the same old thing without ever taking a look at, is there at least a less expensive way to keep the kids safe? And this is an awful lot of money for us to ignore. So I agree with whoever said keep the line item on our agenda. I definitely think we need to continue. Thank you, John, for keeping non-mandated busing on the front burner. It's too much money to pretend it doesn't have an impact. And I don't have anything against school safety for the children. I have 3 grandchildren who go to the school, so I want them to be safe, but I want us to get the best we can from the money that we have to spend on the school, whether it's the operating budget or the school busing.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. All right, anything else on that item? We'll move on to, well, the audit, really nothing new to report. The discussion, Lincoln gave us an update on that last week. So the warrant, when, could you tell me, Lincoln, when the warrant is closed?
The warrant closed on Friday.
Okay, so should you expect a copy of the draft warrant to be provided with the Finance Committee, for the Finance Committee? Within,
yeah, as far as what the selectmen want to put on the warrant and not, that's up to them. So I wouldn't really say there is a draft warrant at this moment, but there will be soon.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, and again, the joint meeting is still scheduled for April 13th with the Board of Selectmen. So, anything else that anybody has under the old business? Communications, the only communication that I got was the email from Mary Beth Carter regarding the Plymouth County retirement. So I would just say on that, Ken, did you update the Article 2 reflective of those numbers?
Yes, there was I believe it was a $3 change from the last amount.
That's not really gonna help us very much, then, is it?
So do we know what the amount is, the amount in that email, Rick, that she sent you, how much it is?
I
That
think
Mary
she
Beth-
did say, yeah.
Oh, you, all
$3.
right, you don't have it there. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't. I just, if I didn't forward it, I will forward it to the committee. Thank you, John. So that being said, Ken, perhaps anything else that you can think of that changed on the Article 2? Perhaps you could email a new copy of the Article 2 that we could use for our base discussion starting on next week.
Okay. We got, I know Mary Beth had called me today about the health insurance line. She had indicated that it was going to be going up by 2.25%. The draft that you guys has it going up by 5%. I talked to Mary Beth about that this afternoon. She has indicated that she would rather keep it at 5% because there's been a lot of turnover and new hires at town hall lately. So that might be a good buffer to use for now until we get a better idea, maybe in a few weeks when she has a chance to look at it a little bit more. So that was a potential change, maybe going down a little, but we're going to keep that where it is right now.
Okay, very good.
And the other line item, I'm probably going to talk to Lincoln about this. Not the street lighting, but I think it's line 243, the vacation pay. Once we know what employees are retiring next year, we can get a better idea on that number as well. Or not this year, next year.
Okay, thank you. John New.
Ken, two quick questions, though it doesn't seem that I ever ask anything quickly enough. If the health insurance line is staying at 5% and there's been a lot of new hires, are the salary items in a lot of these budgets too high?
If I could just interrupt quickly, I mean, so I know, Mary Beth has that recommendation on the health insurance. I can't guarantee that April 13th budget's going to reflect Mary Beth's recommendation. So, I just want to make that clear. I respect her opinion. She's certainly knowledgeable about this, but I just want to make that clear. I mean, as far as what the salary requests are, Ken, you can answer that, but I think it's probably a little premature to answer that.
Yeah, and it might be that it might be that the previous employee was on a single plan and the new employee is on a family plan. There are a lot of variables that are going into that you'd have to look into it a little bit closer.
But the concept of hires, would that reduce not the health benefits, but the salary itself line for some of these department staff?
For some, I don't want to say for all, but that would already be reflected in the budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I think the answer is in some instances, and I mean, there are a couple hiring processes that are going on right now, so, if we know if someone's hired, prior to April 13th, their correct number will be in there in that budget. And if they're not, then the best guess estimate will at that moment, if that makes sense.
Well, in the discussion of salaries, I'm just curious, who knows where we are at with poll workers and the pitch that was made for minimum wage for poll workers in the budget. I believe the budget hasn't moved to reflect an increase in monies for poll workers. Has that been decided as far as potential raises for them?
Go ahead, Lincoln. I believe the Board of Selectmen did vote that at a meeting.
They did, that's correct. So they raised the minimum for poll worker salaries to $12.70 to the current minimum wage. That said, in fiscal year 2022, we're fortunate in that the only election currently that would be occurring is the annual town election a year from now. So it's less of a direct impact on the fiscal year 2022 budget.
So that the money that's in there currently and has been in there before the selectmen's vote should basically cover the one election that we have.
I believe so, but I appreciate you bringing it up. We'll definitely take another look at it.
Okay. Thank you, John, for your questions. And you were correct. It was not a short question. So we will, those are the type of questions, though, that we are going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks as we go through this Article 2 by department. So again, if you can, look back at your notes. Ken and Lincoln are going to prepare by looking at the budgets that have been submitted to date. So is there any other questions anybody has under other business? Okay,
I
seeing
just have
none.
a quick
Go ahead.
question. though.
Yes, Ralph.
Well, it's really not that
Uh-oh.
asking about was with the hiring process. If we have somebody who's leaving, then the new hire wouldn't have the longevity, so therefore they probably wouldn't be earning as much as the person who already left. Would I be correct in assuming that?
Very likely so. Yes. I think
Good
we
That
point.
should-
means that the newer person would have a lower salary and therefore a lower expense line on us.
Probably in many cases. Yeah, not necessarily, but certainly that would be more likely than not. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, that's all I wanted to just include. That's all.
100%.
Thank you, Ralph. Okay, if there are no further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, go ahead, Lincoln, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just a few quick things. I just want to mention that I came up during the meeting. Number one, the ESSER 2 grants. So there's certainly, Kathleen, Ms. Otina had brought that up, and there's certainly discussion going on as to how those are going to be applied and how the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education are going to allow the school district to apply those. So just FYI, I wanted to bring that up and mention it since I know it came up. I think that was it. I just want to mention that since it came up. That's all.
Very good. Thank you. Kathleen, follow up?
Just a quick question. So Lincoln, are you saying that it may or may not be used to reduce the increase in the minimum local contribution?
That's right.
not- Okay.
So I mean, I can tell you, I'm advocating for it being used to defray the costs of the school district in addressing COVID-19, which is what the original intention of the federal legislation was for those monies. I think that's where it should go. They do have some expenses that they need to address, and that was the intention of those monies to begin with. So that's what I'm advocating for. I'm not sure that's how it's going to end up, but that's what I'm advocating for.
They had it in their opening budget revenue using almost 700,000 of it to open schools. So if they do use that 700,000 to open the schools to get everybody back to school, that leaves 300,000 left that they could possibly use otherwise. And right now, it's only in the governor's budget that you're allowed to use it that way. And from what I've read online, that the House and Senate are not real keen in doing it. So the chances it's going to have to be passed legislatively. So to even think about using it, I mean, last year, the final budget wasn't done until what, December?
Yeah.
Correct.
So the decision to, are we able to use this to defer the assessments isn't going to be made until long after town meeting. So for us to even consider using it for, or the school, I should say, to consider using it for anything in their operating budget is unlikely, because it's not going to be passed in the legislative budget till long after town meeting. So
Yeah.
they'd be silly to use it.
That's a
Try to
great,
use it.
that's a great point, John.
Okay, John, thank you. Ken, I'm sorry, anything else that you wanted to bring up? Apologize for skimming by you. We'd like to have you in the meeting, so anything you want to add before we decide to wrap it up?
There hasn't been a whole lot of changes that have come down the pike over the last couple of weeks. It's been oddly quiet, budget-wise.
Okay. All right, well, very good. Thank you very much for your involvement. Lincoln, thank you for your participation in our meeting. So if there are nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion. We have a second by Ralph. Roll call vote. Al,
Yes, sir.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you all for participating.